Start that. And check out our awesome character. All right. Okay. So I'm going to get this going again. Let's see. So kind of where we left off last time. We started talking about these kind of start points and end points. And so the idea behind those start points and end points, they were just kind of game objects that really didn't have any visual property. So they don't have, they didn't have a sprite associated with them. Really, we were just using them to, say, for the start of the game, give locate like spawn point for the character, and then give them a goal that once they got to that goal, then they would be rewarded for doing that. So I'm going to come back, see start point. So I can't find my start point, but if you remember up here, if you select the select icon, you can generate the icon. So you can see right now it's kind of faint text right there. And so if I get my arrows, I said right now I can set up the start point kind of wherever I want it. I said kind of what we're doing right now is we want to put in an endpoint. So we want the character to get to some goal location. And so I didn't, like I said, I was playing with this stuff this morning, so some of it has been removed. So I made an endpoint, and so this is kind of similar to that checkpoint that we made last class. And so if you remember what we needed for our endpoint, we need to have a box collider, because in this case we want to know when the character runs into kind of our endpoint. But we don't want to have it when it collides, like we want the character just to pass through it. So we don't want like our other collisions where if the character hits it, then the character stops. So in this case, we use this is trigger. So by default, it comes back with is trigger being turned off, but we want to turn it on because we want our character to pass through it. And then I ended up just making a cute little checkered flag in Piskel. And I actually put that in the package, so if you didn't feel like drawing in Piskel, you can use that. Hopefully you have better art that you want to put into this. I was just using it for demonstrative purposes. And so I'm actually going to remove this because that doesn't get me to kind of the next point I want to make. So we want to know when the character runs across this the flag or kind of the endpoint. And so I've included a script called checkpoint. I'm going to open that up. And you want to add this to not only kind of the end goal, but if you go the extra step of making checkpoints, so if your character, as part of the bonus, if your character passes the checkpoint and then ends up dying, you want the character to respawn at kind of the last checkpoint. And so this is what our checkpoint script has. So instead of using on collision, like we've been doing with destroying blocks and picking things up, we're now using on trigger. And the reason being is because we're changing the scripting we're changing the behavior of our checkpoints from collisions to triggers. So the on trigger enter 2D, its function is the same as on collision enter 2D. Likewise, the on trigger exit behaves the same way as the on collision exit. And I have it set up right now where we have this flag, this inner trigger boolean, that whenever we enter the trigger, it gets set to true, and then when we leave it, it gets set to false. And so we'll be using this to then indicate to other aspects of our game kind of what's happening and how to set things up appropriately. So so kind of the next part that I want to introduce, that's kind of the next script that is included in this package is something called Game Status Manager. And so I'm going to attach that right now. Well, I have it already attached to the character. And so I'm going to click off these. Right now, our Game Status Manager, so this is included in that new Unity package. Right now it's looking for 3 things. So it's looking for some end screen UI. So we're going to put that together. And then it wants a start point and an end point. And so right now, we have those 2 points defined in there. So I can go ahead and just set those for the object. And so this one you're going to have to pay a little bit more attention to, because this one is going to require you to write some code here. So for those who decide to add in checkpoints, I have a variable here to add in multiple checkpoints. Right now that's just commented out until we start talking about that. And so when the game starts, the start will be called. And then I was demonstrating some of this in the last class. I kind of made like a little character start script. And so it's really kind of behaving the same way, in that it's just taking the game object, which is the player. So it's taking the player and just setting its position to whatever we've defined for the start point's position. And so when the game starts, the character is going to appear wherever the start level is at. And then during update, what's going to happen is that it's going to look to see whether or not that entered trigger flag that we've set for our endpoint, if that's been set to true. And so once that's true, so once the player has entered that trigger, we need to write a couple lines of code. So we want to enable the end screen UI, which we're going to create, and then reset the trigger for the endpoint. And then there's another portion of this too that I'll get into a bit for restarting the game. And so if we want to restart the game, so in instances where, say, a character dies, or with the assignment, we're going to make a button that if the player wants to play again, they can press the button and then return back to the start point. And here we'll set the player's position back to the starter level, and then turn off the end screen UI. So if I just start running now, just to show you, the character does appear. So right now, appears over there. It's quite happy. I'm gonna turn the inspector to debug, just so you can see what's happening with the endpoint. So the endpoint, well, actually I don't need to set it to debug because that is a public. So I'll just set that to normal. So my character run. Whoops. Make sure I click on the. So the character runs. So once the character runs into the flag, it gets that inner trigger ends up becoming true. So really what we're going to do is set up our, so what's going to happen is we're going to set up our game UI, so then when the inner trigger gets set to true for our endpoint, then we get this UI element that pops up that lets us know what's happening. So right now you've got to at least like seen some of the elements for the canvas and UI elements, but you haven't really had an opportunity to kind of write your own. So this will give you a chance to actually get into the Unity UI and be able to play around with it. So what we can do, so the way that the canvas is set up now, so remember, we look at the canvas. So from a distance, we get the HUD window. So the HUD, these 5 boxes that are at the bottom of the canvas. We have the health slider and the health label, which we'll get into that for the next assignment, how to kind of tie into that. But then it's really just these kind of different UI game objects. Really, these are just game objects with UI elements tied to it. So we can go ahead and add our own. So I'm going to go ahead and say create empty. And right now, let's call it end screen UI. So to look at end screen UI, it defaults with that. So if you remember the anchor points, so the anchors define how kind of the object scales. So in this case, right now, it's just set to keep its location in the center of the screen. So if we collapse the screen or make it bigger, whatever we put in here is always just going to appear right smack dab in the middle. Or use the middle as its anchor to where it needs to be on the canvas. So really we need kind of 2 elements for this. So we want to have like some text that pops up. It says like you win. And then we want to have a button. And so we've had some experience, or we've seen them in action, but we haven't actually used them ourselves. So let's go ahead and do, so we use UI and use text. And so, so I have a text element here. So I'm just going to name it the, so end game text. Whoop. So I can zoom in on that. And so with the kind of UI elements, what it allows you to do is you can set kind of different fonts. So there is this other font that exists, and you can add your own fonts to it. But we can go ahead and add this kind of silly font. It's the same font that's used for that health label. And I want to make, so you can scroll down, you can change some of the properties. I want to go ahead and make this kind of a white text. It's a little bit easier to see. And then I want to make it bigger. Whoops. So I probably need to make this a little bit wider too. So I'm going to make this 600 by 400. And you can see, I don't know if I want the text to cover the whole thing. So I'll say maybe 200. So you can kind of see where it's positioned at. You can move the elements around. So if I move it up here, let's see, I'll center it in the middle. Maybe I want to make this a little bit bigger. And then, hooray, you win. So I'll give you, like I said, you can kind of mess around with the text element. And then I'm going to That's gonna bug me. And the other part we need is a button. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get a button. And so, with the buttons, so they have so you've already have experience with this. So they have different images associated with it. So if you want to kind of make your own custom button, so you don't want this kind of generic white, white button, you can make something of your own. But what I want to do is probably make it a little bit bigger. So I'll say width's okay. There we go. And then within the button, you have some text. So it has a text element associated with it, so you can change the text of the button. So probably select play again. Let's do like that. And we'll keep with the silly fonts. Okay. So now, and then we can run. So we can run the game right now. So that looks pretty big and obnoxious, and so so I think that'll work for what we need to do. So right now, because we only want this to appear, so when the character hits the endpoint, we don't want to have this enabled right now, so we're actually just turn it off. And so we'll change, it being active or inactive in the script. So right now we can just leave it off like that. If I come back to button, so if you remember from last class, for the different buttons and toggles, you can call back into kind of different scripts that are game objects that are present in the game. And so we just saw within that game staff manager, there's this restart game that we're going to fill in, and that's what we want to call. So let's go ahead and add that into here. So, I'm going to get my main character, which is Woody, and so there's my game status manager, and then there's this restart game. And so that's what I want to call whenever that button gets pressed. So that's now tied back into the game. So if I start playing now, oops. Okay, so the UI is gone. I can run across the finish line, but right now I don't get any UI popping up, so I need to add that in for the last bit. So that's where the kind of scripting comes into play here. So this is where we have to kind of add our stuff. So like I said, we're going to set, or we're going to have a reference to the end screen UI. And so in here, so once we know that we've reached the end of the level, we want to enable that end screen. So if I say end screen UI, and then set active to true. So if you remember, we were kind of playing around with this on the place items that you could, when you pick up items, instead of destroying it, you can make them disappear and then make them reappear in another location. And we were doing that through the set active. And so we're going to do kind of the same thing here. So when we set active, then it comes back into the scene. And then another thing we need to do is we have to reset the trigger for our endpoint. And this is due to have an issue with Unity's updating. So we can set it to true, but if we place the, well, what may happen is that if we press the play again button, if we haven't reset this, it may end up skipping or overriding our reset for when we want to take the UI away, or we want to make it disappear. So I'm just gonna, you can just copy that line up there and just set it to false. So then it just resets that trigger back to back there. So if I save that, and now I'm going to come back to Unity. Start playing, so it's running around. Whoops. Oh. Probably know why that did not work, because I did not update the end screen UI. So I want to make sure it has that. So let's try that again. Run, 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 run. Yeah, you win. Cool. All right. So we got that popping up. So now the next thing we need to do is tie that to the button, or have the button actually do something.
But it shows every time that when you hit it and you hit play again button, it should spark right below where it says endpoint. It says spark.
Right.
So I'm guessing you need to fix that or something.
So yeah. So the reason that that's happening is the event listener. So right now it's so the event listener for the mouse is still, like, it's still checking to see what's happening back here, and that goes into the kind of the use equipment. And so, you know, so yeah, if I'm pressing things are gonna start sparking. So one thing we can do is we can disable that behavior such that, like, when the player hits the end, like, they can't keep clicking on stuff. Like, all they can do is just click the button. And so if you wanted to change that, so what you can do, so because this game status manager is tied to the player, we can access the the components that are tied to our character. And so here we could do something like this. We could say disable player from clicking and breaking stuff. So we go game object. So we want to get the component, which is our use equipment. So use equipment, that's the one that's responsible for controlling or listening for those mouse clicks to see if the player's clicking on stuff in the background. And then you can change this enabled flag. So you can set that default. And so if you come back to...
Oh, I'm still trying to... Go back real quick?
Sure. So if you look at in the inspector, you'll see that all the different components, you have an ability to turn them on and off. And so if you turn them off, then what you're saying to Unity is that you no longer want that component to be part of the update loop. So it's not going to receive any more callbacks for what's going on. And so it's equivalent, if you come back here, it's equivalent to just checking these items here. And so if we disable use equipment, that'll turn off, I said the behavior that we have right now with the sparking and all that. And so just to verify that works. So here, I'm going to run. So you can see use equipment end up turning off. And now you can't click on, can't break anything. All I can do is press a button. So we get to our restart for the game. So what we want to do is these parts here. So we want to set the player back to the starter level. We want to turn off the end screen UI. And then because we disabled this use equipment, we're going to re-enable that. So then they can get back to playing as they were. So this part right here, setting the player position, we already do that. So we do that up here in the start. So we can just grab this line here. I can pay attention. Shoot. All right. So copy that. And then turning off the end screen UI is as simple as, let's say, just going from active, going from true to false. And then we want to re-enable the use equipment. And we can just copy the line we had here.
Wait, which one?
The one that we just wrote for.
Oh. Okay, that's good.
So you just copy that, paste it, and then change it from false to true. Because now we want it to be, re-enabled, so the character can start clicking on stuff again. So if I come back, so let's see if this all works. So run. Yay, you win. I press, yay, I'm at the start. And then you can live this vicious loop again and again and again.
No, that would be the very short game.
Yeah, so that, like I said, so that taught said by kind of defining our UI component and then just having it, listen for what's happening with the endpoints. Then we can get things kind of pop up and start again. So we can get kind of creative with this now because. So now y'all are becoming experts on Unity. So kind of other part of the assignment was, or kind of one of the other bonus points was, if you fall off the sorry, my mind blank. If say like you die, or let's say you kind of walk off the edge, at that point you want the game to restart. So, so how can we do something? I gotta sit down for a bit. So how can we do something like that? So really, what we want to do, so we can, what would be kind of cool to do is not only just have the game restart, but also kind of just bring it home to the players that they screwed up. So instead of having a you win, let's have like a you die or you lose, right? So,
I could just imagine a sound effect that you could put on at the end.
So, if we have time, we can add a little sound effect to it.
Oh,
So for now, so what we can do, so we've already got the end screen UI going, and that covers pretty much everything that we want. So really, like I said, we can kind of reuse these items again and again. So one way we could do this is you can kind of make a prefab of this and then kind of redo it, or you can change the text kind of in code, so then you can say you win or you lose. So I'm going to opt for the text version, or kind of the code version, because you'll see that's pretty easy to do. So for right now, but what we need to do more than anything right now is we need to see whether or not the player's kind of falling off the edge. So in update, so let's make a note for ourselves here, kind of what we're doing. So check to see if player has fallen off the world. So for those who believe in the flat earth, this should be exciting. Okay, so I'm going to come back to our character.
Too much in this.
So I'm going to move our character. So just to kind of test what we're doing here, I'm going to move the character to a point where it's a little perilous. And so when the character falls, so we want something to happen when the character falls off the world. So if you look at the position, I'm screwing around with this. So really our interest is in that Y. So once we get past a certain distance in Y, we can probably safely assume that there's nothing else there. They're just going to fall off the world. So let's use that as our check. So once their Y position kind of goes past, let's say, like -5, and at that point, it's safe to say that they've fallen off and are not coming back. So I'm going to move the character. So let me move the character back. In fact, what I need to do as well is move our start point. Whoops. Just so when we do this, it'll work. Okay. So I'm going to come back to our script. So here I can say if our game object, and I want to look at the position of the character. And really I'm only interested in the Y position. So once that's less than -5, so at that point, once they've kind of fallen off the world, then we want something to appear. So then we can say set their so we want to turn on the end screen UI. And remember, if we turn on the end screen UI by just saying set actor to true, but we also want to say we don't want to have the you win text because that just seems silly. So we want to put some other text in here. So set the text for the end screen. So in end screen UI, we can so end screen UI. If we come back to so in here we have underneath it we have this endgame text object, and then we just want to modify the text that's associated with it. So here, so get where is that? Oh, I thought there was a find. So you could do something like this. So get component in children. So this will look for whoops. Let's see. That may be getting a little too complicated. Probably the easier thing to do, you do something like this. You just say public, and we've kind of done this with the inventory manager, where we kind of pull out elements from the UI and modify it directly in the script. So here, I'm just going to call it endgame text. It's not happy. Oh, because I want the UI, the Unity engine UI text. So here we'll come and say endgame text dot text is equal to you died. And we'll set it to true. And so if I come back, then what I need to do once this finishes compiling, so here it's now looking for some text element. So I'm just going to set that equal to the endgame text that we have in our UI. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that over here. So let's give this a shot and see what happens. So if I fall off, whoa, you die. Yes, Kristen.
So does that cause problems if you had made like those land blocks destroyable and you go down more than -5? Would you suddenly like with your game end?
Yes. So that's a good question. So yeah. So if you were to break apart your world, and if your world just if you kept digging, it would go further down. Then what would happen would be, that would trigger the you die. So in this case, what you would need to do, you could either just change that check such that you have to go much further down the screen before, or in the world before it would trigger, or you could do some fancy stuff where, if you want to see if you're still on a platform, then you could do something like you could do that check. Otherwise, if you're just kind of, let's say you're floating in space and you're falling at a rapid rate, it's safe to assume that you're about to die. But you can see, so a problem that we have here is our character is buried in this world. And so the problem with that, or kind of what happened was, because the character was still falling, and then we did this reset, the update kept the character, it went to move the character back, but then it was still stuck on the update from previously, so it ended up moving the character down and burying it into the ground. So what we need to do is that when we know that we're dead, we need to get the character to stop falling. So really it goes back to kind of what we were doing with the use equipment, and we can turn off the component. So in this case, we'll turn off the rigid body. So then it'll stop responding to the physics. And so when we move it, we can set it back and then turn physics back on. So the character appears in kind of the right spot. So here, so we'll say turn off character physics. So here we'll say game object, get component, rigid body 2D. So we'll turn that off. Oh, I need to do that. Was not happy with that. Rigid body does not contain a definition for enabled. It may have overrides. So instead of enabled, so I guess rigid body, they override the enabled, so you can't just turn it off and on and off. But what we can do is we can change the gravity, so then we can just turn gravity off, so it just stops and just kind of floats in space. So then the character is like, just kind of floating there. So let's do that. And then I'm going to copy these two lines because when we restart, I want to make sure gravity's still in play. Okay. So let's try this and see what happens. So I compile and then run. So it falls off. Died. If we come back, we can see our gravity scale is at 0. Play again. We're back in business. And gravity still works. And you can see it still works. Yay! All right. Cool. Okay. Other thing we need to do too, because we're changing this text to "you died." So it's going to overwrite the text that we had for the UI element. Because if I were to do something like this, so you died, and if I were to run across and get over here, it still says you died. We don't want to send mixed messages here, so we need to go back. So if we copy that, so when we get to if we know that, the character is going to win, we probably should update that to say you win. Okay. So I say we can verify that still works. You died. You win. All right. Cool. So I think probably this is a good point to stop. The only thing I haven't covered, which we can talk about either next Tuesday or I can put together a short video on how to do it, is how to do multiple checkpoints. In fact, I may lean towards just making a short video, since it is just kind of it's a bonus. But the idea being that if you want to put in kind of multiple checkpoints and then have the character respawn at the checkpoint rather than the start, how to do something like that. So what I'll do is I'll make a short video on how to do that and put it up on YouTube for those who are interested. But yeah, that concludes class for today. Like I said, for next class, we're not meeting here. We're going to meet down in theater and get to hear a cool talk from folks at Blizzard.